Hi guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we'll take a look at some new entitled people content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
The first story is titled, EM calls the police on me for stealing her daughter, who is my girlfriend and an adult. Sorry, this is so long, but I hope those of you who read it will enjoy it. Background. This happened about 5 years ago. My fiancé and I have been together 7 years this month. We're hoping to get married this year but might postpone due to the circumstances. We were reminiscing some old stories yesterday when this one came up, and she suggested I share it. She was my girlfriend at the time, and at the time I was fully aware that her mom was a few fries short of a happy meal, but this was the pinnacle of her behavior. If you guys enjoy this story, I actually have a few more I shall share if you like. Sorry for the length, but I hope you guys enjoy it. FYI, there is a happy ending. Cast. EM. Entitled Mom, my future mother-in-law. Girlfriend. Ellie. P.O. Police officer and op. Obviously. Story. Ellie and I weren't living together at the time, she just stayed over from time to time when she could. I took her home after she had been staying with me a couple days and was heading to work. But shortly after, just before getting to work, I get a phone call from her, and I can tell she is in tears. Apparently when she got inside, EM immediately blew up on her about being gone for so long, even though it was only 2 days, and she told EM she was going to be gone and kept in contact with her while she was gone. But Ellie just sorta brushed it off and went to her room. EM's house was pretty much your stereotypical crazy cat lady house. House badly decaying, cats all over the place, going to the bathroom in random places and whatnot. And when Ellie gets to her room, she realizes while she was gone, the cats pissed and shit all over a pile of her clean clothes. But whatever, Ellie decided to just bag them up and she would wash them next time she came to my place. Her mom didn't have a functioning washer at the time. And apparently, that really set EM off. EM apparently thought Ellie was bagging her clothes because she was planning to go back to my place that night, stay another few days. So, she stomped into her room, grabbed the bag, ripped it open, and flung the clothes all over the room along with the cat shit and piss while screaming at Ellie that she's not going anywhere. That's when Ellie ran outside and called me. She was so upset and didn't know what to do. Her mom had been doing crazy stuff to Ellie since I'd been with her, but up until I just helped her however I could while not getting involved and not saying a word to her mom. I told her to go ahead and get the things she needs, and I'll take her to my place. She said she would love that. I told my work I was gonna be late due to an emergency and turned around to go pick her up. When I pulled back up to the house, Ellie was in the driveway crying. I went and hugged her, told her it was gonna be okay and that she could stay with me as long as she wanted. So, she went back inside to get her things. As I was standing outside waiting, I heard the door open again and went to help Ellie with her things. Oh, it's her mom. EM comes stomping out with her hair crazy and frizzled, and an old nightgown. She beelines for me and gets right in my face. EM, with an extremely thick high-pitched southern accent. My daughter said I need to come out her and ask what you think of me. I knew that was a blatant lie as Ellie would never instigate this. You got something to say? Huh? You think I'm trash, don't you, huh? That's what you think, isn't it? Again, up until now, I'd completely kept my mouth shut, and was trying to maintain that. But this woman was up in my face, freaking out, and was tormenting the woman I loved, so I finally looked at her and broke my silence. Op. Why do you treat her like this? M. What do you mean? That's my daughter and I worship the ground she walks on. Op. Oh really? So, calling her a slut, bitch, and whore is worship? Yes. I've heard her say this with my own ears. M. I would never say anything like that. Op. Getting rather irate. Bullshit. I've heard you say it. EM. You get your fucking ass off my property. Okay. I almost never find myself in situations like this, so I'm not used to it. I say that because after she said this, I pretty much saw red. I'm not proud of it, but I just started shouting every curse word in the book I could possibly think of at the top of my lungs while she went back in the house. But thankfully, that only lasted a few seconds and I immediately calmed down. So finally, Ellie comes back out with her stuff, we put it in the car, and I assume it's over. But Ellie turns to me and says, I'm sorry but we can't leave yet. Op. Why not? Ellie. Mom called the cops. I sorta had a feeling that would happen, no big deal. So, we just sat and waited for the cop to arrive. After about 10 minutes or so, a cop car pulls up. Right when he does, EM comes out of the house, and oh my god. Yes, she was doing exactly what you think. She instantly puts on the fragile, brittle old lady act. Hunched over, walking slowly, the whole gig. And of course, when PO asks her what happened, she has to pitch her entire medical chart to the guy. Ellie will tell you this woman has been terminally ill for 12 years, lol. So, when she finally gets done trying to milk this poor guy for sympathy, she tells her version of what happened. EM. Sir, he came onto my property and verbally attacked me. He's awful to me, sir, and I've never even done anything to him. He's turned my daughter against me and is trying to convince her to leave. At first, he seems somewhat sympathetic to her, until he turns to Ellie. PO. Ma'am, this is your boyfriend? Ellie. Yes, sir. PO. Okay, and how old are you? Ellie. Sir, I'm 23. This was my favorite part because the officer looked up from his notepad with a look of, wait, what? Obviously, he was thinking Ellie was a minor or something based off of how EM was acting, but quickly realized just what he was dealing with. Eventually he turns to me. PO. Okay, sir, please give me your version of what happened. I did so. Funny side note, at one point PO looks up at me and says, "You look really familiar, do I know you?" It actually turned out the PO and I had gone to high school together. Once we recognized each other, we laughed and shook hands and very briefly. This was hilarious because out of the corner of my eye, I see EM has a big scowl on her face as she sees me getting friendly with PO, but anyway. PO puts his notepad away and turns to me. Just FYI, he says the following with this heavy tone of, I know that you are fully aware of this and don't believe you are in the wrong at all, but I have to say this as a formality. PO. Well she doesn't want you on the property, so be aware that if you come back here you technically can be charged with trespassing. Do you understand this as I've explained it? OP. Absolutely, sir. EM. But sir, I want to press charges. PO. He didn't do anything illegal, ma'am. EM. But he verbally assaulted me. PO. I understand that, and while that was ill-advised, he slightly turns to me and gives me a small gesture with his hand, and I nod in agreement. It's not something I could arrest him for. He agrees he will not come back on your property without your direct permission. EM. Okay, fine, whatever. Ellie, come back inside. Ellie. What? No. EM. You heard PO. OP is leaving and you're staying here. PO. Whoa, ma'am, I didn't say that at all. EM. But. BU. PO. Your daughter is not a child, ma'am, she is a full-grown adult, she has every right to go wherever she wants. EM. I'm her mother. She lives under my roof. I told her she needs to stay here, so she needs to stay. PO. No ma'am, that's not how it works. If she wants to go stay with her boyfriend, there is absolutely nothing you can do to stop her. M starts the fake crocodile tears and stomps in the house in defeat. Ellie and I thanked the officer, got in the car and left. We've been living together ever since. Happy ending. Believe it or not, EM isn't really much an EM anymore. Over the years since that day, EM has actually decided to make an effort to try and improve herself. I guess she realized that if she didn't make changes, she would lose her relationship with Ellie. So EM started taking advantage of her medical coverage and went to see her psychiatrist and got medicine for mental illness she actually had, as opposed to the one she would make up. Since then, well, she has actually gotten way better. She takes her medicine regularly and has a boyfriend that is an extremely kind man and treats Ellie as though she were his own daughter. So basically, EM isn't really an EM anymore. We actually get along very well, and we see them frequently, and we help each other out whenever we can. We actually look back on the early years when she was in fact an EM and laugh. So not only is everybody getting along well, we can actually share the cringe stories and happily laugh about them. If you guys would like to hear some more, let me know. The next story is titled, Customer Said I Must Not Know My Boss Very Well. I Work for My Dad. Pretty great story from work this morning where I got to one-up this guy. So, I'll start by saying I work for my dad at his store. I work the front counter and interact with most people, customers. Also, I look a lot more like my mom. My dad runs a separate business as well, but anybody who needs to talk to him for either business can usually find him in the office here. So, this guy shows up this morning looking pretty ruffled and asks if my dad was here. I replied, "You just missed him. He is out for the morning doing a couple things." He was very displeased by this information and was acting very loud, unprofessional. He started looking around the store and eventually came back to the front counter with a piece of equipment that he wanted to trade, for some work that he apparently did for him before. Keep in mind, I know most of my dad's workers and have never seen this guy before. I told him that I don't do any negotiations while he's not here and I can't just let him leave the store with something for free. I told him that normally he probably wouldn't want to take that route, but he was welcome to discuss it with him once he's back. He looked at me and replied, "You're making a big mistake here and you must not know XY very well, because he would do this for me and blah blah blah." I just looked at him and replied, "I actually do know him quite well, seeing as he is my father." I told him that he could either leave or wait for my dad to get back. He kind of looked up at me and was pretty speechless. I could tell he felt stupid and regretted his comment. He ended up waiting around in his truck for my dad to show up, and guess what? He wasn't gonna do a trade. It's almost like I know my boss well. Apparently, the guy just worked like 2 days for him and then quit. Plus, the thing he wanted was way more expensive than what he was owed. Side note, the pay wasn't made yet because we are bi-weekly. I swear some of the people around here are nuts. But a petty, "don't you know who I am?" moment made my day. The next story is entitled Mom Demands My First Class Seat on a Flight and Causes a Mid-Air Commotion. I, 32 male, was on a flight from New York to Los Angeles and had booked a first-class seat for myself. I was looking forward to a comfortable flight when a woman, mid-30s, and her young daughter, around 7 or 8 years old, approached me. "Excuse me, that's my seat," the woman said, pointing to my first-class seat. "No, it's not," I replied, showing her my boarding pass. "I booked this seat and paid extra for it." "Well, my daughter is tired and needs to rest," the woman said, ignoring my explanation. "You can just sit in coach." I was surprised by her audacity, but I held firm. "I'm sorry, but I'm not giving up my seat." The woman then began to raise her voice, attracting the attention of the flight attendants and other passengers. She started shouting and demanding that I give up my seat, saying that her daughter needed it more than I did. As the commotion escalated, other passengers started to chime in, some supporting me and others supporting the entitled mom. The flight attendants tried to calm everyone down, but it was clear that this situation was quickly spiraling out of control. Eventually, the captain, in his 50s, came over to try to resolve the issue. The entitled mom kept insisting that her daughter needed the first-class seat more than I did, and she wouldn't stop shouting and making a scene. The captain tried to reason with her, but she was having none of it. She started to become aggressive and physical, grabbing at my bag and trying to pull me out of the seat. At this point, the flight attendants had to intervene and physically restrain the entitled mom. It was a chaotic scene, with passengers shouting and the entitled mom continuing to struggle against the flight attendants. Finally, the captain announced that if the entitled mom didn't calm down and return to her own seat, he would be forced to make an emergency landing. This seemed to get through to the entitled mom, and she finally backed down. She slumped back into her own seat, still muttering and grumbling. The rest of the flight was tense and uncomfortable, with everyone on edge and the entitled mom glaring at me every chance she got. When we finally landed in Los Angeles, I was relieved to be off the plane and away from the drama. Looking back on it, I can't believe how entitled and aggressive some people can be. It was a truly scary experience, and I hope that I never have to go through something like that again. The next story is titled, I Was as Nice to Her as She Was to Me. My stepmother is the queen of Southern, bless your heart, style backhanded kindness. She is petite with a cute little Southern accent, and everything she says is so sweet, if you take it at face value. My sister and I have tried to talk to our father about how mean she can be, but he says we're reading into it too much. A couple weeks ago, my husband and I hosted Passover with 11 adults and 2 kids. Passover is already a point of contention because she's repeatedly not so subtly excluded my husband who isn't Jewish. She arrived an hour early, without notice, with 2 of my stepbrothers with intellectual disabilities, to help. And she brought a gift, a wine glass that she made a point of indicating is decorated to be for the woman of the house. For context, by tradition, different family members bless certain things on the Sabbath and holidays, and the husband blesses the wine. She and my father recently moved into a new house, and their open house was last week. She forwarded me the invite she sent to her family a week earlier. It opened with a checklist, starting with stepmom and dad, move in, followed by all the great things in her children's lives. And she suggested my husband and I come in between her family in the morning and her friends in the afternoon, so we wouldn't feel overwhelmed. So, my husband and I went, with our dogs. No, we didn't tell her in advance. We just assumed she'd be fine with it, because she always says she loves them so much. We enter the house, and her grandchildren shout, "Doggy," and start rubbing bellies. She tried to suggest we leave them in her son's house across the street, since it would be much easier on us. I kindly thanked her but insisted it was no trouble at all. Then we gladly followed my father on a tour of the house, taking plenty of time in each and every room. She watched as her nice, new house that all her friends were coming to see ended up smelling like dogs. And she had to smile the whole time. ETA. I have no problem with my stepbrothers coming to my home. I invited them. I only mentioned their ID because, while I absolutely adore them, they were not going to be helpful, as my stepmother obviously knew. The last story is titled, I accidentally scraped a parked car. Karen decided she was the patron saint of calling the cops and shouting from the rooftop. Was backing out of a parking spot in a strip mall and accidentally scraped a car that parked too close, literally parked past the line into my space. Still totally my fault and I accept responsibility. I was in the middle of calling the non-emergency police line and writing a note for the other driver when some random Karen stormed toward me, screaming like a banshee that she saw what I did and that I needed to at least leave a note for the driver. I pointed out that I was literally in the middle of writing the note. Then she told me that the info on the note better be accurate or else she would call the cops. I show her my phone and tell her I'm already on the phone with them but to go right ahead and call them herself if she wanted. That apparently pissed her off because she went store to store shouting that I hit a car and that people needed to check that it wasn't theirs. The owner of the car eventually came out and we assessed the damage together and exchanged contact info. I still had the police officer on the line, but the owner said not to worry about it because they didn't need to file a police report. Meanwhile, Karen is still standing off to the side with her hands on her hips and glaring at me. She finally went away after the other driver gave her a $5 thank you. Thank you for listening.